Hello everyone, and it is that time once again to be talking about my favourite films of the past year. And to be honest, 2023 felt like the year that just kept on giving when it came to film specifically. Every time a crap or average film was released, you'd kind of get like 4 or 5 great ones right round the corner, and it felt like that for the entire year, which has made my job of compiling this very list quite tricky. Now, before we get into the main list, there are a couple of things I just need to go through, like I always do in these sorts of videos. The first of those being that this list is my own personal opinion. It's going to be completely different to whatever your list is, because that's the beauty of opinions and having different and varied taste. So don't get mad in the comments if your favourite film doesn't end up on my end of the year list. Secondly, I did not see every film that was released this year for some reason or another. There are some films that I really wanted to see but unfortunately didn't get the chance to, like the Palme d'Or winning Anatomy of a Fall, which I really wanted to see but unfortunately missed and never got a chance to watch it. And then there are other films that I also really wanted to see, but they just straight up haven't been released in the UK yet. Two of the biggest examples being Poor Things and The Holdovers. Two films that I heard great things about in the festival circuit, but they haven't been released in the UK, so I haven't had a chance to watch them. And the last thing to go through before we get to the main list is the honourable mentions. These are great films that I still highly recommend that you watch, but unfortunately they just barely missed out on the top 20. So with that being said, my honourable mentions for 2023 are Dungeons & Dragons Honour Among Thieves, Rye Lane, Close, Extraction 2, Nimona, Late Night with the Devil, and They Cloned Tyrone. Now that we've got all the preamble out of the way, let's finally get into my 20 favourite films of 2023. So at number 20 we have the movie Air. Whoever thought a film about a shoe would be this interesting? Then at number 19 we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, a film that oozes with personality and style from start to finish. At number 18 is Celine Song's emotionally heartbreaking Past Lives. At number 17 is May December, probably the biggest surprise for me this year. At number 16 is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. At number 15 is Gareth Edwards' return to form with The Creator. At number 14 is the devastating indie drama Blue Jean. At number 13 is the highly underrated How to Blow Up a Pipeline. At number 12 is Greta Gerwig's smash hit comedy Barbie. And at number 11 is my favourite documentary of the year, still a Michael J. Fox movie. Are You There God, It's Me Margaret is one that I didn't get to until very, very late in the year. It came out in the UK back in May, and I'd heard generally pretty good things about it, enough to make me want to check it out, and I didn't end up watching it until November, which is purely down to me being busy and life getting in the way. But when I did finally get round to watching it, I was just so enamoured by the whole thing. The whole film just feels like one giant hug, and it's one of those few films that I saw this year that as soon as it finished I immediately wanted to rewatch it again, because of how warm and inviting the whole film feels, but also because of its script, which is honestly kind of one of my favourites of the year, and the cast, which are great across the board, especially Benny Safdie and Rachel McAdams, who play possibly the best on-screen mum and dad I've seen in a film for a long time. But outside of all of that, it's just incredibly heartwarming, it's very funny in places, it nails the dramatic moments as well, and is without a doubt possibly the best coming-of-age film to have been released in 2023. The Boy and the Heron for me was a very overwhelming film in a lot of different ways. First of all, this was the first ever Studio Ghibli film that I saw on the big screen, and to do it at the London Film Festival nonetheless, that alone is just kind of overwhelming. Secondly, the fact that this is possibly Hayao Miyazaki's last film put a lot of weight onto the movie as it was, and then actually seeing the film unfold before my very eyes felt like a very overwhelming experience as well, because for those of you that haven't seen The Boy and the Heron, this film throws a lot at you, and for some that can be a bit of a turn-off, but for me it actually kind of worked. It's not Studio Ghibli's best or most polished film to date, but that being said, it really delivers in terms of just kind of smacking you around the face with gorgeous visuals, beautiful messages, and a brilliant score that is honestly one of my favourites of the year. And I feel like the film works best when you look at it as a culmination of everything Hayao Miyazaki's career has worked up to this point. It genuinely feels like a culmination of his entire career just crammed into one film, and when you look at it in that perspective, as well as the fact that this story is very personal to him and his mum, it just adds a whole nother layer onto things as well. Like I said, it's not Studio Ghibli's best film to date, but it's definitely one of their most ambitious, and when you look at it in the context of Miyazaki's career, it's an impressive feat nonetheless. This year presented a lot of films that just genuinely impressed me from a filmmaking standpoint alone, and what was able to be done in the medium of film. Some of them we'll get to later on in the list, but one of those films was Bradley Cooper's Maestro, a film that I didn't really have that great of expectations going into it, but by the time I finished watching it, I was kind of in awe of what I had seen. And I think the reason that is because Maestro is one of the few films I've ever seen where the amount of energy and passion going into the main performance is being translated just as much in its filmmaking. And I think that's partly to do with the fact that you have Bradley Cooper not just in the main role but directing as well, so he's able to translate that passion and that energy and that unbridled love for this specific subject through both of those mediums. His performance can be very showy at times, but considering it is about someone who was very showy, it makes sense, and it is honestly such an enthralling performance. And again, he's paired beautifully with Carey Mulligan, who gives one of my favourite supporting actress performances of the entire year. But then you look at the filmmaking and it is just as visually impressive and as stunning as the performances, and they both work hand in hand to create this overall filmmaking experience that I just wanted to learn more about. Plus, this film has one of my favourite scenes of the entire year set within a cathedral that honestly had my jaw on the floor. Like, the entirety of that scene alone is breathtaking. But the film as a whole is genuinely fantastic. It might be a bit Oscar baity for some, but I don't care. I had a blast with Maestro, and I just cannot recommend it enough. John Wick Chapter 4 gave me everything that I wanted from this film, as well as a load of other stuff I really wasn't expecting. It was a perfect send-off for this franchise. It introduced some great new characters, especially Donnie Yen's character, which is one of my favourite characters of the whole year. And more importantly, this delivered some of the best action set pieces, not just of the entire franchise, but of the whole year. Honest to God, like, the top-down sequence alone might be one of my favourite action set pieces ever put to film. It's simple, it's effective. I don't know why anyone else hasn't done that before, and it's done in such a visceral way that it will get a reaction out of anyone that watches it. And also, just from a storytelling perspective, I thought this was an incredibly satisfying conclusion to the John Wick series, and it just felt like the cherry on top of what was already a bloody delicious cake. Now, like I said with Maestro, there were a handful of films this year that just impressed me from a filmmaking standpoint alone. Maestro was one of them, and Talk to Me was another one of those films. Honestly, from a filmmaking standpoint, Talk to Me is one of the most visually creative and energetic films I've seen throughout the entirety of 2023. It's also my favourite horror film of the year as well, which isn't saying much considering I didn't see that many horror films this year. But with all that being said, Talk to Me just delivered in so many different ways. Like I said, the filmmaking and camera work in this film is so simple and creatively ingenious that, again, similar to John Wick Chapter 4 with that one specific scene, I don't know why half of this stuff hasn't been done before, but when it's done in this film, in the way that it's done, it just seems like a no-brainer. And I think the Philippines who directed this film did such an amazing job, and I can't wait to see what they do with the sequels that they have planned for this franchise, now that it is a franchise. And yeah, if you've not seen Talk to Me, you are really missing out on one of the best original horror films of the entire year. Okay, now we're in the top 5, and I get to talk about one of 2 films this year that completely ruined me from an emotional standpoint. Honestly, when I say that I was crying from the moment Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 started, I'm not kidding. Like, as soon as the Marvel logo came up, I was in pieces, and then the moment it ended, I was still in pieces. I don't think I've cried this much at a film, ever. And I think that's for a number of different reasons. One, because it was the last time I think we will ever get to see these characters on screen in this form ever again. That kind of set me off immediately, plus all of the stuff regarding Rocket and his backstory was handled so beautifully, and I'm so glad that James Gunn finally got to finish his story with these characters that he brought into the MCU and that he's made everyone love throughout the years. Similar to John Wick Chapter 4, I'm just so happy that these characters and this story got the conclusion that it needed. Because if someone else had handled Chapter 3, I don't think it would have felt the same, and I don't think it would have felt right. So the fact that James Gunn was able to come back and finish the story that he was trying to tell from the start with the characters that he brought to us back in 2014, I'm just so happy that he was able to do that in the way he wanted to do it. And even outside of the emotional aspects, the cast are just as good as they have always been, if not actually at their best in this film. And this film somehow gave us one of the best fight scenes in the entire MCU. Now on to the second film that completely ruined me emotionally, Andrew Haig's All of Us Strangers. If you saw my video talking about the films I saw at the London Film Festival this year, you will know that this film didn't just ruin me, but everyone that was in the screening room on the Sunday morning. I have not had that much of an emotional gut punch from a film in quite a long time, whereas Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was emotional throughout the entirety of the runtime. This one slowly built up and got more emotional as it went on, leading to a finale that just kind of rips your heart out and then puts it back in with a tender pat. That's the best way I can describe it. And I honestly, considering how much I was crying while watching this film, I weirdly enough just want to watch it again. From the performances, which are easily 4 of my favourites of the whole year, to the way the film looks, to the script, to the music. The music, oh my god, I don't think I'm ever going to hear Frankie Goes to Hollywood the same way again now, because every time I hear one specific song, it just kind of sets me off. But outside of that, the film gets a lot of other stuff right as well, from a storytelling perspective, and especially from a thematic standpoint as well, especially everything involving the main character's parents. That just put a massive lump in my throat every single time they showed up on screen. I cannot recommend it enough. It is a heartbreaking movie, but it is one that you'll be thankful you've seen afterwards. 2023 was an incredible year for animation. You had The Boy and the Heron, Nimona, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Elemental, so many great animated films all coming out in one year. Yet the one film I think everyone is in agreement on that is the best animated film of the year was Across the Spider-Verse. And I'm going to be no different in saying that this is the best animated film of the year, because it is. It just delivers so much in such a concise, well-told manner that I just can't be mad at it. It's just such a good film. It takes everything that worked about the first film, doubles down on it, and actually kind of pushes what animation is capable of in quite a few ways. From the way different worlds and characters are animated, to the fact that it just tells its story so compellingly and makes you feel for these characters even more than you did in the first film. The film just gets so much right, and to be honest, so many people have praised Across the Spider-Verse to the point where if everything I'm going to say isn't really adding anything new to the discussion, so I'm just going to be regurgitating whatever they've said. But that being said, what people have already said about the film is true. It looks gorgeous. The characters are a ton of fun. The story is genuinely riveting. It's just such a good film. Now into my top 2 favourite films of the year, and to be honest, with these top 2 specifically, these could possibly change depending what day you ask me. Like, if you were to ask me later down the line, oh, what's your favourite film of 2023? Depending what mood I'm in, I might say this one, or I might say whatever's at number 1. But for the sake of this list, at number 2, we have Martin Scorsese's tour de force, Killers of the Flower Moon. Honestly, there isn't really much I can say about this film that hasn't already been said. It's an absolute behemoth of a film. It's 3.5 hours, yet I could happily watch another hour or so of the film. The performances are incredible across the board. The messages that it has to say about how the Osage tribe were treated is just as poignant today as it was back then. And yeah, it's just such a great film, and by the time it's finished, you feel like you want to know more about what actually happened, and is one of the few times I've seen a based on true story film that genuinely makes me want to learn more about what happened after it's finished. Is my favourite film of the year a bit of an obvious pick? Yeah, I guess. Am I sorry about that? Not in the slightest. I had to put Oppenheimer at number 1 for a number of different reasons. It's been in the number 1 spot for quite a few months. Pretty much as soon as I watched it, it shot straight to the number 1 spot and hasn't moved since. And I just love this film for so many different reasons. It boasts some of the best performances of the entire year, whether it's Cillian Murphy in the lead role, or Emily Blunt, or Robert Downey Jr. There's so many great actors in this film, all giving 110% all of the time. Like, even if they're on screen for like 5 minutes, like Rami Malek, they still give an incredible performance for how little they're on screen for. The cinematography and camera work in this film is phenomenal. Like, this is one of those films this year where I genuinely had no idea how they did half of the stuff you see in the film. The fact that every single thing in this movie is in camera blows my mind. It blew my mind back in July when I saw it, and it still baffles me now. The sound design is phenomenal. Ludwig Göransson's score is honestly my favourite of the entire year. Again, I know it's an obvious pick, but compared to any other score this year, his one for Oppenheimer is the one I've listened to the most outside of the film. And yeah, it's poignant, it's riveting, it's, again, similar to Killers of the Flower Moon, a 3-hour film that I could just happily rewatch or watch another hour of with ease. It just impressed me so much in every single way, and I was just riveted from the moment it started to the moment it ended. So those are my favourite films of 2023. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments what some of your favourite films of the year are. And for anyone who's curious, if you want to see a big long list ranking all 61 films that I saw in 2023, then there will be a link in the description to my Letterboxd list, which does just that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you all in 2024. Bye.